Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in. Thrilled to be here with you today. There's some sad news for sure that we should start off with, and I just can't believe the news and how often this sort of thing unfortunately happens. I know that this is a specific attack. This is a targeted attack. 8 people were killed in Atlanta area, specifically, I guess, at Asian massage parlors. 6 of the people killed were Asian women. One was a white woman and one was a white man. Right now, there's no official motive that's been discovered. The suspect, Robert Aaron Long, 21, of Georgia, has been arrested. He actually was arrested because of a pretty cool driving maneuver that one of the officers used to spin his car out and then apprehend the suspect while he was fleeing. So that is awful and terrible news and a horrible way to start any sort of conversations on the show. But it's surreal. I want to say this just to start off to talk about this, because right now there's a lack of additional information to really dive into what possibly could have happened and why, other than someone carrying out a heinous attack. It's weird that my brain, and maybe a lot of our brains, has started to just accept this news as the reality we all live in now because of how often it happens, as opposed to react to every one of these stories like we used to back when I guess they felt more uncommon. And I want to continue to react to these stories the way that we should react. This is a horrific tragedy. This should not have happened, obviously. Our hearts go out. And I know people say whenever you give thoughts and prayers that doesn't mean anything, but it's all I can do, and it's what I want to do. So my thoughts and prayers go to all the families involved in this. Obviously, it appears as though there might have been a connection to the race involved, and there is a lot of concern about a heightened level of attack on the Asian American community, partially because of coronavirus and how the Chinese themselves, the government, and China, the country, wind up involved in that process. I do want to say this actually, too, about that whole concept. And I've said it before, and I know that our former president, Donald Trump, who I have audio from, by the way, because he called into Fox News, and it's been a while since I've had Trump audio. But our former president would say that the China virus or the Chinese virus, there's a really important distinction to make between the government that operates in China and does a lot of really scary, really odd things, and Chinese people and Asian American people and people from any country. The country itself is not, the same as the individuals who are within that country. So you cannot just blame people because of where they're from, but we absolutely need to blame the Chinese government for the way in which it handled coronavirus. But if this attack was perpetrated for any reason because of that connection, it's just utterly misinformed and horrible and dangerous. And a lot of other words can be added to that, too, because the people that you should be upset with in any degree, and certainly never take it out in a violent way, are the government officials and no other people. That's the same as saying like Nancy Pelosi represents all of America. She's not every American. Someone in a foreign country might be mad at Nancy Pelosi, but I would not want them to have any anger toward me about that, as you would not feel the same. So we need to find a way to get through these tragedies, through these horrible events, and understand the motivation, have those conversations. But still, certainly I can't ignore these stories, because I did debate it. I was like, well, Biden's in the news. He gave an interview. There's a lot of things that I could talk about with him, immigration, all over the news again for another day. A quote from Biden, which I can get to here in just a sec, that is sort of disingenuous as to what he said and what is being covered. And also, and I was just talking to my producer, Phil, about this, had former President Donald Trump said the same thing, the headline would not be flattery like it is for Biden. The headline would be very, very different. It would actually be pretty close to accusing him of being a racist. And yet, before I do that, I just want one more time to highlight the tragedy that happened in Atlanta and say how awful it is to see these stories continue to occur. It was so odd that during the time of the pandemic, during the time of quarantine, one thing we saw less of was mass shootings and violence to the scale that we had sort of been accustomed to hearing about every so often. And so I hate the fact that I have to look at and read another story where multiple people were shot and killed, and certainly one where it might have been targeting a specific community. That is awful. And my heart, my prayers, all of that, it goes out to all involved. All right, let's transition to the Joe Biden interview. long form interview, one of the first ones he's done. He's actually prepping to do a press conference too. It's going to take him a week to prep to be ready for that press conference. So good luck to him. But the biggest headline, and the one you're going to see everywhere, and you're seeing it with this tone of flattery, this tone of way to go, Joe, way to step up and say this and do this. And it is surreal when you think about the quote that's being used and the way in which it's being pitched to the American people via the media. Because if this was the same quote and a different human that we had different, traits to, or different, adjectives to, the coverage would be 180%. It would just be totally a ridiculous 180. So let's first hear from Joe on immigration.
Let's talk about the crisis at the border. Some heartbreaking scenes down there right now. And a lot of the migrants coming in saying they're coming in because you promised to make things better. It seems to be getting worse by the day. Was it a mistake not to anticipate this surge?
Well, first of all, there was a surge the last 2 years, in 19 and 20, there was a surge as well.
This one might be.
The first move is always to blame the last guy for the things he had done before. But I will give Stephanopoulos a little bit of credit here, which is not something I do all the time. He does push back.
As well.
This one might be worse.
No, well, it could be. But here's the deal. First of all, the idea that Joe Biden said come, because I heard the other day that they're coming because they know I'm a nice guy and I won't do what Trump did.
This.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. They're not. The adults are being sent back, number one. Number two, what do you do with an unaccompanied child that comes to the border? Do you repeat what Trump did? You take them from their mothers, to move them away, hold them in cells, etc.? We're not doing that.
Do you just let everybody in? Is that the policy that you want to advocate for, Joe, then? If we don't, and I'm not saying that I know the right answer to this. Thank God I'm not the president of the United States. But I do know that you can't do either. You can't allow every single person that reaches the border that's an unaccompanied minor. And I've said this time and again, for the safety of the children. You don't want to encourage that behavior because you don't want families that are in situations that they need, to get out of, to take a risk and send a kid without an adult across a foreign border. Continue, Joe.
And most of them come with a phone number. So what we're doing is we're putting together an entire organizational structure so that within 7 days they're able to get in the phone, contact that number, find out whether there is a mother or a father, whether it is safe, whether it is a secure circumstance to get the child to that adult.
It's going to take some time, though, to get those policies in place.
Sorry, I gotta let it keep going. But I just laugh at that. It's going to take a while, Joe. There's a problem now at the border. There's a higher number. I know that we just debated whether or not it's worse than it's been in the past, but there's a higher number than we've seen in 20 years, according to very credible sources. So aren't we in need of some sort of solution right now?
Again, do you have to say quite clearly, don't come?
Yes, I can say quite clearly, don't come. And what we're in the process of getting set up, and it's not going to take a whole long time, is to be able to apply for asylum in place. So don't leave your town or city or community.
Don't come is what Joe Biden said. And he said it very, very quickly. And that is the quote of the day, according to a lot of the headlines, a lot of the places that cover this sort of thing. And there's a weird, and I don't know that this surprises a lot of us. I know it doesn't surprise many of us, actually. A weird way in which everything that Joe Biden does right now gets covered. There's spin. There's spin on so much of it in the positive, in the highlighting the good, as opposed to just having an honest conversation about where success lies and where it doesn't lie. Has Joe Biden united both parties? No, he has not. Was that a promise he made? Yes. Has it happened? In no way, shape, or form. He continues to not really credit former President Donald Trump for anything that he did that was successful. And that, again, is the point. There is success for every single person that's in office. Joe Biden has successes. There are things that he will do that will be liked by people, even on the Republican side. I know some people don't want to hear that, but it's true. The same is true of the guy that was in office before you, that a lot of people seem to want to pretend every single thing that happened was atrocious and terrible and horrible. But yet, as we see here, as we look at this and hear the conversation between Joe and George Stephanopoulos, all we're getting right now is spin, and then that's being covered as if a solution was found. There's no solution to what's going on the border right now. They want to do something that is humane, that's respecting of the situation as it exists, that children show up at the border without parents because they believe they're going to get in because Joe Biden is president, and we need to find a way to handle that. I know that they're getting more facilities available there, that obviously other organizations have been involved, but right now the status quo is inevitably that these kids gain access to our country, which only encourages more kids to be sent. That's how it works. I mean, envision it this way. Say you were in a small community, and I'm not being specific to which country it's coming from, but a small community where, things are not great, where there's a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulty, and you know that if you could get into the United States and you could get there, easily somehow, that life could get better. And then you find out through maybe a neighbor or someone that some of the children in the community are getting into the United States. They're being sent there. The risk is high, but they're getting in. And so you might also choose, as hard as that might be for a parent, to send your kids as well, because now you're aware that there's this opportunity for at least them. And obviously there's going to be very tragic, very horrible stories that come from that, because kids shouldn't be sent on long journeys across foreign borders. That's not something that should happen as just a logical idea in this world. And yet that is sort of the world in which we're living right now, and the encouragement that's being thrown out there. But also just to praise Joe Biden, President Biden, for saying, do not come, do not show up at our border. There's going to be some asylum things set up in your country where you can apply and hang out and stay there, but just stay and don't enter our country. If President Trump, former President Trump, had said that, what is the headline everywhere? I ask you that. I have to take a break. This is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show, but noodle it for me. What is the headline? Maybe even tell us on our social media pages. Tell us on our Facebook page, The Chad Benson Show, our Twitter page. You can text us. You can tell me on my Facebook page at The Craig Collins Show. What would be the headline if the exact same sentence had been uttered as quickly, too? Because Joe Biden said that very fast, and it was almost a non-issue. The point he made was beyond that simple sentence, and yet that is the coverage of the day. Quick break. Craig Collins filling in on The Chad Benson Show.
Warning, no snowflake zone. Uninformed opinions are in danger of melting. The Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins. I want to start off by telling you about the dumbest debate on social media right now. It's dumb, but it's fun. I think it's kind of fun. A new survey asked Americans how you shorten St. Patrick's Day. By the way, happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone out there. Do you add 2 D's or 2 T's? St. Patty's Day or St. Patty's Day? I don't even know if you can hear the difference there. 49% of Americans go the traditional 2T route, St. Patty for Patrick. 29% go with the D version. The rest, confused. I love the fact that we had a survey out there. How do you shorten the word Patrick? And only 70% of people, or 80% of people could answer the question. 20% were like, I don't know. That's how confused we are as a society. 1/5 of us don't know how to shorten somebody's name. They're like, I have no answer to that. Are you sure you have no answer? You're undecided on the T or the D? I'm totally undecided. By the way, no one ever take that last sentence out of context, please, because it's going to sound very different. Let's move on to Biden. Let's move on to Trump. I have Trump audio for the first time in a long time, which is very odd. But before I get to that, I'm going to, demonstrate the difference, because there's some Biden audio out there. Of course, he did an interview yesterday, one of the first he's given, one of the long-form interviews he's given since he's become president of the United States. He said a lot of things about immigration, which are being covered quite a bit. He also talked about Putin. He talked about Republicans and whether or not he has brought the two sides together, which I thought was very interesting, the questioning and the way in which it's been handled. And I also just love there's moments where Joe Biden is praised for the way in which he's just like, come on, buddy, come on, pal, let's do this. And yet I just think the break there, the casual break in that version of an answer is not always as flattering or as beneficial to him as maybe he thinks it is, or sometimes it's covered in the news. Let's hear from that.
They haven't had that epiphany you said you were going to see in the campaign.
No. Well, I've only been here 6 weeks, pal. Okay, give me a break. Been there 6 weeks. I think the epiphany is going to come between now and 2022. This is there's 78% of the people say they support this program. 52% of Republicans. Let's assume it's off by 15%. You're going to go home and campaign. Republican voters want that $1,500 because they're in trouble.
So obviously he's discussing the stimulus check specifically and how it was very, very partisan in the way in which it was passed. 100% of the voting was from Democrats, and absolutely every Republican said no to it. There has been coverage about Republicans now saying it's good that it's out there because it's out there. Not many of them have said that, by the way. And I know a lot of people wanted the money. It's very difficult to portray, a fair version of that conversation, though, because if you're asked a simple question, hey, do you want $1,400? Is that something you want? Yes or no? You're probably going to say yes. Do you want to consider all the ways in which it's going to cost our country money in the long run, and maybe taxes are going to go up, which has already been talked about? It's already out there in the news. Well, no, let's not worry about that so much. Let's just talk about the here and now, the fact that a lot of people are hurting. Obviously, the pandemic has had an effect on a lot of Americans, and the money is beneficial. And I'm sure this week, as it's hit your bank account, which for most banks, I think it's probably there by today. I know that some had delayed it, but I think that by today or tomorrow, those who had direct deposit access should probably see the money. I bet you at some point you enjoy it. You look at the bank account, there's money in there that you didn't expect to come in as quickly or be there, today. And yet, boom, there it is right there. So I'm sure that's great. And yet there is a longer form of that conversation that maybe isn't acquired from every individual who answers the survey. So that information is still likely to change over time. And just the come on, pal, the buddy part of it at the very beginning is one of my favorite things. He's like, I've only been here 6 weeks, dude.
Oh, no, well, I've only been here 6 weeks, pal. Okay, give me a break.
Come on, guys. Give me a break here. Although maybe if he just spoke like that all the time, he would be more interesting. That very casual approach all the time, every answer is, come on, buddy. You got to, let's move on here. You haven't united the sides yet, President Biden, and you know that you're not really attempting to. And one of the easiest things you could do is just credit the past administration for their successes. Craig Collins filling in on The Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Thrilled to be here as always with you. What did 2020 or what will 2021 smell like? What is the scent of the year for the year that we've just recently started a few months ago? Yankee Candle has thrown out an answer to that. And I start here only because I think it's odd. Their new candle, Discovery, is officially the fragrance of the year. I'm sure they want to sell a lot of these. Well, and smell them. Discovery has fruity and spicy notes, including guava nectar, tangelo, orange, red ginger, peach, vanilla spice, saffron. The candle itself is made out of a white soy wax, and this is not a commercial. The only reason I tell you all this about this scent of the year, Discovery, is because I have audio of former President Donald Trump, and I just want you to decide what this smells like. Does this smell like Discovery? Does the stuff we've heard from Joe Biden earlier in the show, President Biden, smell like Discovery? I don't know. But this was an interesting call that former President Trump made to Fox News because he hinted at a run in 2024. And anyone that wants that, anyone that doesn't want that, only time will tell as to whether or not former President Donald Trump can stay popular enough and relevant enough to run in an election 4 years from now. But out of all the people in the world, maybe, as far as capable of captivating and holding attention, good or bad, certainly he's at a very high percentage on that list. He's at the very tippy top. So can he remain relevant for 4 years? A lot of people may say yes. Let's hear how he answers the question, whether or not he will run 4 years from now, already being asked just a few weeks in to the President Biden administration?
Well, based on every poll, they want me to run again, but we're going to take a look and we'll see. We have first steps first. We have to see what we can do with the House. I think we have a very, very good chance of taking back the House. We did a great job. You know, you're going to lose from 15 to 25 seats the last time. I got involved. I worked very hard. I made tremendous amounts of meetings, speeches, and teleconferences and everything else. We ended up winning 15 seats instead of losing potentially 25.
I just love that whether you like him or you don't like him, you like the hyperbole of a Donald Trump all the time. I got tremendously involved. A lot of big things happened. Go ahead. Continue.
That's a big swing. And it almost cost Nancy Pelosi her job. I think we have a chance of taking back the House. I think we have a chance to do better in the Senate. We need leadership in the Senate, which, frankly, we don't have. We need better leadership in the Senate. You have a good chance to take back the Senate. And, frankly, we'll make our decision after that. But
he just said that he can really help get us more seats back, get the Republican Party more seats back in the House, get them control the Senate once again in a couple of years. And if all of that works out well, he could run again. By the way, you will hear the person interviewing him, which is not really a thing you do with Donald Trump. I don't think you interview former President Trump. I think he kind of talks to you. You'll hear a question try to be asked, and then former President Trump will just keep going on the original question, will he run in 2024?
You know what? If you take a look at the polls, Maria, when you take a look at what's happening on our southern border, when you take a look at what's happening with energy independence, which will be gone in 2 months, and we had it for the first time ever, we had it. And prices were low. When you take a look at all of the things, and then when you add the fact that I was the one, and this administration was the one that came up with a vaccine, which is going to save the world, okay? It's going to save. We would be, I think, worse than 1917, where 50 to 100 million people died. The vaccine is such a big thing. When you add it all up, I think we'll do very well in 2 years, and I think we're going to do very well in 4 years.
For those that love this guy, they agree with him. He is the savior of the world in a sense. And for those that hate this guy, obviously they hate everything he just said. But darn it, it's effective. If you compare that to what's happening in the interview happening that was on ABC, Biden does not command this type of attention, positive or negative. It's just true. And even if the media tries as hard as it can to spin everything that Biden will do and has done so far into an overwhelmingly positive thing, it's not going to get us to a place where he is treated the same. I think that we'll be in for a very interesting election season, the next one. It'll be a very interesting one because if the Republican Party doesn't want to see President Trump run again, there's very high opportunity for a third party to exist. All right, let's move on. There's a lot of other things to get to here in the world. I love this story partially because I think it's kind of, I get some of the credit. Maybe I'm being President Trump now and saying that, I brought this up first. I talked about this before, and now everybody's involved. NASCAR is going to use COVID detecting dogs at the Atlanta Motor Speedway's races. I was just talking about this, how great dogs are at detecting coronavirus, how they can be trained to do it better than tests. And it's going to happen. The 360 Canine Group is going to be utilized at the track's infield to screen drivers, crew, staff working on site for just a 30-second test, I guess you can call it, a sniff test to tell whether or not anybody is potentially positive with coronavirus. As I had said previously on another episode of this show, which you can check out in our podcast, they're available on all your favorite podcast platforms. Dogs are so good at detecting coronavirus, they can do it earlier and more consistently than any test we have. That's right. If you wanted to figure out whether or not you have COVID-19, you either can go to a doctor or get a dog. And now NASCAR is going the get a dog route. They're like, no, we don't need you to do the blood test or any of that stuff. We don't need to stick anything way too high up your nose. We'll just have you pet Spike, and Spike will tell you whether or not it's okay for you to be a part of the festivities today. I'm so excited about this. I want this to be everywhere. I would like, and I know that the vaccine's getting rolled out. We're going to be at a point, hopefully very soon, that enough people have the vaccine, enough people are immune to COVID-19, that we're back to normal life. Biden did cover that in his interview, and I can get to it later as to whether or not July 4th is an achievable goal. That's what he teased. If everybody does what he says, maybe by July 4th, life will be pretty similar to what it used to be before COVID-19 was a thing. But if we could just have dogs everywhere, like how great would that be for a small amount of time. And maybe some people are going to say no. The cat people are going to, I guess, write the show now. But truthfully, just having them at like every mall, every location, just a dog sitting there smelling people and barking at the people that have to turn away. Obviously, this to me is a paradise I want to live in because I think it'd be fun. I do. I think that would be a fun scenario that I wouldn't have to worry about a test or anything else. It's just me and Fido, and I have to figure it out from there. There's a lot of other things in the news that probably seem more or less relevant to people. I love this story too, just because I don't know if this is designed to give people hope. You went through the pandemic. You probably stopped hitting the gym as much as you used to hit the gym. If you're a single person, maybe you're worried that that's going to impact you negatively. Dating.com. And granted, most of the places that put these things out, yes, they are utterly self-serving. For Dating.com to say that it's okay to not be in perfect shape, you can still find a match, does encourage people to use Dating.com to find that match. But it has revealed that the dad bod is the majority of single body type preferences as mentioned by women. Nearly 75% of singles shared that they are a fan of the dad bod. 75%. This is not a super ripped person. This is a person that has some donuts that have stayed on the body, I guess to say it that way. Even though dad bods were a highly ranked preference, more than 20% of those surveyed also shared that body type doesn't matter to them at all. This is obviously more about women than men. Only 15% of Dating.com members shared that they had a preference for a Barbie or Ken-like body. I think this is so interesting to say that, hey, if you put on some weight, yeah, maybe you need to get back in shape. But really, just to date, you don't have to. So do it either way you want, I guess. That's the plan moving forward. Yeah, it's hilarious. And also, by the way, the dad bod is a very confusing thing to understand because it seems like there's a lot of different ideas out there as to what a dad bod is. It could be a guy that's pretty close to in shape or a guy that's not all that close to in shape, depending on who you ask. But hey, I just wanted to give you that little piece of positivity today so that you can not worry as much if that was the biggest concern, getting back into the dating world. One other thing I saw that I loved, and then I'll take a break. People moved to a new neighborhood. They decided that they wanted to be friends with their neighbors, so a couple put a sign in their front yard in order to try to make friends. I know coronavirus is still a thing. Some people are going to say that you can't socialize with people that aren't from your household yet or any of that stuff. I guess they're choosing to go a different way. But what Amanda and Thomas chose to put on their sign is the best thing ever, free beer. They said, here's free beer. They put a sign in their front yard. If you want to make friends with us, we will give you some free drinks, hang out with you for a little while. Obviously, people are still a little weary of taking them up on that offer, but I guess they said it has been more successful than they anticipated. And it's a really nice move. It's kind of like offering a free beer at a bar and having someone then stay and hang out and maybe come to that bar again. This is the in the neighborhood equivalent. So I recommend to everybody, this is what this segment has become. I recommend we get dogs for every business location to smell COVID-19. And I recommend that if you move to a new neighborhood, you offer things like free beer. They also offered pie and cookies and maybe even having a dinner with some. That's a lot of things to put on a sign. But I do think that that's tremendous and the way to go to certainly make more people around you like you and understand that you're a welcoming couple that are just there to meet the rest of the neighborhood. All right, I got to take a break. This is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show, where we reach across the aisle and occasionally poke someone in the eye.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. I want to take a few minutes to tell you the story of Marilyn Hartman. If you don't know who Marilyn Hartman is, she's 69 years old, and she loves one thing in this world, one thing and one thing only, sneaking onto flights. She loves being a stowaway. That's her favorite thing. Marilyn Hartman got arrested again at the Chicago O'Hare Airport. This happened just recently. She had just, I think, had a court case in which probation and maybe some mental health was ordered. I think there was some other things that might have been involved in that, but she wasn't actually going to go to prison yet. It was a plea deal because she just continues to attempt to do this. In 2019, she tried to sneak onto an O'Hare flight and got stopped at the second checkpoint. Again, she is a repeat offender in this world. She, weeks ago, gets to a final resolution on that case. All right, I'm going to do probation, do all this stuff. And then a couple weeks after that, caught sneaking on again. I don't know why. It doesn't sound like she's trying to do anything bad. She just wants to fly places and not pay for it, which, to be honest, there's some level of, you could kind of sort of see, not that I'm not encouraging it. No one else should be doing this, but you can sort of see the appeal of being a stowaway on a flight. It's just such an odd thing to, like, she's got a hankering for it. It must be. It must be like she's sitting at home like anybody else who's addicted to anything. And I know that this is not necessarily comedy, but in the world of being a stowaway on an airline, it feels a little sillier. And she's just like, I gotta try to sneak on again. And everybody in her life at this point would be telling Marilyn to stop doing that. They're like, just pay for the ticket, or we'll pay for the ticket for you. We'll figure this out. Do this any other way. This is something that's sort of silly to get you in this much legal trouble. Can't help herself. Arrested again. Going to be in trouble again. And I don't know also, like, there is that other thing. It's a pretty good insanity plea, I would say, that if you keep trying the same thing with no success, that you're insane. A failure should tell you eventually to give up on a thing. So far, not the case for Marilyn Hartman, 69 years old. I hope for the best there. I hope whatever the best is supposed to be, that it occurs. I saw this story, and I wonder exactly how this works. That's true about a lot of things. California attractions and park associations announced recently that they are going to discourage people from screaming at amusement parks. This is a headline I think we've seen in the past. It's all about how, COVID-19 can be spread a certain way. But obviously the screaming at amusement parks one is a move that it's tough, I think, to prevent that. If it were me, if I'm a kind of person who's like, I want to go to the amusement park, I want to hit that up now because the world is getting better and maybe, just maybe, it's the kind of thing that would be fun for me. Not being allowed to scream at it or being heavily discouraged from screaming at the old amusement park. What? Huh? Like, if the ride's not good, sure, I'm not going to do it. But if the ride's a lot of fun, isn't that just a human reaction? You might even be banned. You might get kicked out depending on how much you're screaming. I mean, just enforcing that alone seems like one of the silliest things ever. Hey, we want to talk to you and your mom. Can you come over here for a second? Yeah, what did we do? Well, your mom was screaming a lot when you guys were riding the Raptor. Can we get you to tone that down, or we got to throw her out of here because she's too loud? That, I don't know. That would ruin an amusement park trip for me at the very least. Maybe a lot worse than that. Krispy Kreme Donuts is going to be celebrating St. Patrick's Day today by giving out a free green donut to anyone that goes. So if you want to celebrate St. Patrick's or St. Patty's, whatever way you say it, you can pick up that free donut. I think that's pretty cool. I do enjoy myself a Krispy Kreme. None of these companies are paying for these mentions that I throw their way, but yet I keep doing it. And then one other thing I saw in the news that I wanted to cover quickly here. Tinder, who I've already talked about because they're going to start doing background checks on everybody and giving you the ability to run one on anyone you want to potentially go on a date with, which I don't know if you have that come up in the conversation. Like, as you're chatting back and forth with a stranger you've never met yet that wants to take you for a Krispy Kreme donut since they're green today. And you're like, yeah, it's no problem. I'm just going to run a quick background check, see what your past employers think about you, how they feel, all that kind of stuff. Now, apparently, they're going to give free COVID-19 tests to users that can meet up safely. This is an announcement they've made. It's obviously limited. They're not going to be able to do it for everybody, but they're going to give some at-home testing. $109, I think, is the price on the website. If you want to throw down, you get it mailed to you. You take the test. You know whether or not you have COVID-19, and then you go ahead on your date. So, nothing is going to take away the romance of meeting a new person for the first time. Obviously, it's not going to be dampened at all by the fact that you ran a background check and sent them a COVID-19 test in the mail before you actually met them for that green donut. No, it'll be fine. You won't indicate any sort of potentially difficultness to that situation at all. That'll work out great for everybody. Actually, okay, I have a little bit more time because I'm firing through these very quickly, which is something I do every so often with the news. I saw that Google's newest device is a way to track your sleep. But what's creepy about it, and that probably is a sentence we say about a lot of technology too, is that it uses radar. Google's newest Nest Hub, which is going to be on sale at the end of this month, costs $100, and it uses radar to watch you while you sleep to give you an understanding of how well your night's sleep went. You put it on a nightstand. It can measure everything from the sleep your chest movements, your breathing patterns, maybe what other things you're doing in the bed if you're a toss and turn kind of person, and whether you snore or cough. Accurate sleep data could be very useful, according to a lot of experts. You can find out how much you really are sleeping and how deeply you're sleeping from this device and several apps that are available on the market. Come on. Every time we say this sort of thing, doesn't some party, and I love technology. You guys don't know me that well on the show. I have all the smart devices. Alexa is all over my home. It's in pretty much every room of my house. I don't think I want Google to watch me sleep via radar. I think that that's probably my limit, which is saying something that I've found it. I think that Elon Musk could put a chip in my brain. I might be willing to take that on if it makes me a lot smarter, which is something I need. But do I want to have radar recordings of my sleep just sent to the old Google? No. Even if it's beneficial for my, my well-being, I think that that's probably too far of a line to cross. And honestly, something that I've talked about earlier as well this week, where you got to break up the tech companies. Once the tech companies have access to this level of information, they know this much about us, who our friends are, what we search on the internet, and then how well we sleep with video. I feel like then we're at a place that, all right, we need to take a big step back here. This is the Craig Collins version of the Chad Benson Show. Chad's back tomorrow. Quick break. More after this.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. New news from Mountain Dew that I'm going to get to in just a bit. But okay, we should start with political news first. President Biden did an interview. Very few of these get done, so it's interesting to hear. It's interesting to see what questions were asked, how George Stephanopoulos held him accountable. They asked about Cuomo, and Biden had an answer about Governor Cuomo. I think it's interesting the way these answers sound, though, and also tremendously interesting what Joe Biden almost said. This feels to me, in the way in which this almost went, that this would have been the first real official President Biden putting his foot in his mouth moment. And, that's something that he's done as a politician a lot. And it didn't happen. I don't know if he has a person in his ear saying, no, Joe, don't go down that road. I'll point it out when it occurs here. But this is the answer to the Cuomo question. How do you feel about him remaining, and maybe should he step down?
You've said you want the investigation to continue. You saw Chuck Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, majority of the congressional delegation don't think he can be an effective governor right now. Can he serve effectively?
Well, that's a judgment for them to make about their state, where they can be effective. Here's my position. It's been my position since I wrote the Violence Against Women Act. A woman should be presumed to telling the truth and should not be scapegoated and become victimized by her coming forward, number one. But there should be an investigation to determine whether what she says is true. That's what's going on now.
And you've been very clear. If the investigation confirms the claims, he's gone.
That's what I think happens. And by the way, it may very well be there could be a criminal prosecution that is attached to it. I just don't know. But let the investigation. And I don't know what it is. But I start with the presumption. It takes a lot of courage for women to come forward. Some are not. Anyway, it takes a lot of courage to come forward. So the presumption is it should be taken seriously. And it should be investigated. And that's what's underway now.
After the entirety of that clip, it bears mentioning that Joe Biden, President Biden, has been accused of overstepping and doing some terrible things. One woman specifically accuser, a victim, says that Joe Biden did a lot of really bad things to her. So again, this is something that's not new even for this politician, the one answering the question as far as sexual harassment claims are concerned. But what's truly interesting about this answer is this moment.
It takes a lot of courage for women to come forward. Some are not.
Some are not. That is the most pregnant of pauses to after he says some are not, and then you just hang there.
takes a lot of courage to come forward. So.
And he moves on. It takes a lot of courage. Anyway, it takes a lot of courage to come forward. Obviously, what it sounds like he was saying, and no one can officially know, I want to add that caveat to this. I don't know what would have been said because it wasn't spoken. But some are not credible, feels to me to be the ending to that sentence that was never finished. And that is about as hot of a take as you could have. And President Biden chose not to have it, at least not to articulate it. Very, very interesting as far as the specifics of Cuomo are concerned, which obviously I don't necessarily think that any potential answer to the question actually involved Cuomo. It might have been more about himself. And again, I'm putting a lot of words in the mouth of the president, and I'm aware that I'm doing it. So I want you to be aware, too, that these are not things that were said and not things that we can know. And yet, wow, if that moment had happened, that would have been the Joe Biden that the Democratic Party was afraid of putting in the position he's in now. It didn't happen, which is obviously very good for all involved, I assume. But certainly the type of conversation that a lot of people do have in their regular walks of life, but maybe don't have on the scale of president being interviewed by a member of the media. There was also talk about the filibuster. Filibuster is an interesting thing. The way in which it's utilized now to slow down the political process and whether or not it's something that needs to go away. Mitch McConnell, very much against any sort of changes to the current way the filibuster works, and said that he would ground all of the Senate to a halt, essentially. And this is something he's done before when Democrats have teased the idea of getting rid of a filibuster because, then he feels that the political process has been changed too much and everything would be slow as molasses. I don't think I'm quoting directly, but apparently, according to Mitch McConnell, if you get rid of the filibuster, everything you do is going to be awful. Not that it's not like that now. A lot of us might already feel like the way in which things work politically is slow and stupid and silly and overly argumentative, but it would get way, way worse if filibuster goes away. How did President Biden respond to the filibuster question? Here you go.
I don't think you have to eliminate the filibuster. You have to do it what it used to be when I first got to the Senate and back in the old days when you used to be around there. And that is that a filibuster, you had to stand up and command the floor. And you had to keep talking alone. You couldn't call for, no one could say, quorum call. Once you stopped talking, you lost that, and someone could move in and say, I moved the question of. So you got to work for the filibuster.
So you're for that reform. You're for bringing back the talking filibuster.
I am. That's what it was supposed to be. Look, I think, don't hold me to the numbers, George, but I think between 1960 and 2000, I'm making this number up. I don't know.
I love this part of the answer, too, by the way. Where it's like, I'm making it up. I have no idea what the answer is here.
Between 1960 and 2000, I'm making this number up. I don't know.
This is another moment where someone should have jumped in his ear and been like, Joe, just don't finish the sentence. You don't need to, if you don't know, if you're really just pulling things out of thin air, you could skip this.
There were 50 filibusters. And now they're like 200 since then.
Just put a hold on it, that's it.
Yeah, so.
Wait, am I supposed to respond to that as if it's actual? There were 50, now there's like 200. That's, again, I'm just making this up as I go. I can't help laugh at that. I wish that more politicians on both sides of the aisle would do that. I'm just making this up. What I'm about to say to you, completely fabricated. No part of it's grounded in any truth whatsoever. I want you to know going in, I'm still going to say it as if it's true, and then we can talk about it as if it's true. But this is my opinion, and none of it's fact. That would be great. All right, let's get to Mountain Dew. I'm more excited about Mountain Dew than politics. There's a brand new product coming out. Again, no payment given to me to talk about this product. It's called Rise. It's supposed to replace your morning coffee. I think Mountain Dew has been trying this for a long time. There's a lot of energy drink products out there on the market. I love them. I don't know if I'm obviously being super millennial right now. My wife hates that I love them. My wife is a coffee drinker through and through, but I like the alternative. I like going the other road. These new flavors, they're all like a breezier. It says here, and I'm quoting, that the Mountain Dew Rise is basically Mountain Dew, but it's adulting now. It's not for kids anymore. I know that's going to make people mad. For $2.59 a can, you can get a pomegranate blue burst, an orange breeze, strawberry melon, a tropical sunrise. There's other flavors. It's got 25 calories, 180 milligrams of coffee, which is essentially 2 cups of coffee. Caffeine is what I meant. And it's loaded with supplements that help you get over the hump, I guess, if you need some extra vitamins, zinc, vitamin A, C. Where do we stop with this stuff? I did talk for a little bit, I think this was earlier on in this week, about the way in which the seltzer drinks are now the latest alcohol trend. and they're just getting crazier and crazier. The energy drink thing, and again, I'm a fan. Can you just throw any product you want in along with some sugar and some coffee and then call it a day? Is that how that works? Or maybe even not sugar anymore, maybe some substitute because it's only got 25 calories in it. But are all these vitamins? I don't know. There's immune responses to it. It highlights how it might beef up the immune system at a time of COVID-19, probably health concerns still being there. No mention, of course, of if it has like the coronavirus vaccine in it, although that would sell well, Mountain Dew. If you want to go down that road of throwing, some vaccine in the energy drink, I think you'd sell out very quickly. And there's a lot of other supplements in here that might do things like prevent Alzheimer's disease, truthfully mentioned in the article I'm reading. But I don't know. I don't know if that's enough to get us over the hurdle to do the energy drink. If you're someone that goes that road, or if you judge that road like a lot of people do, as I said, am a fan. And apparently roughly 60% of the energy drink market is still owned by Red Bull and Monster. So Mountain Dew's just trying to get a deeper cut there of that segment of the beverage world. All right, I got to take a break. A lot coming up on the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in. I'm going to go have myself a Mountain Dew.
I can't take it anymore!
Well, get over it. It's time to forge a new path with your very own political cartographer, Chad.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Happy to be here. I'm not sure that I'd call myself a gun advocate, but every so often when I see a story where a gun helped prevent something horrible from happening, I feel like those are worth sharing. Those stories are not shared anywhere near as often as the stories where something horrible happens and guns are obviously involved. So this happened. This is in Atlanta, Georgia. Someone is at a McDonald's drive-thru, and they're getting their meal. It's a woman. She's ordered her meal. She's obviously just doing what everybody does. And some guy wanders up to her car and starts trying to pick a fight with her by yelling and screaming at her. He eventually gets access to her food, I guess, and puts it on top of her vehicle before starting to choke her. A guy randomly walks up to a car, picks a fight with a woman, and then starts to choke her. And how does the situation end? Well, the woman's got a gun, and the woman puts the gun up in the air and fires warning shots in the air, which scares the guy enough to stop what he's doing. And then authorities eventually apprehend the guy, found the suspect and the victim both waiting for them at 9:00 because the woman was armed. And how many times do we hear stories like this? How often do stories come out in which something horrible happens and a gun is involved, and not this version of a story where a gun owner who has every right to have access to the weapon utilizes it as a deterrent as opposed to anything else, doesn't hurt anybody, fires warning shots into the air, and prevents a bad thing from occurring. Obviously, the guy is still arrested. He still is charged with aggravated assault, but this could have gone a bunch of different roads, and it went this road, and it's almost a non-story a lot of places, but I felt that it deserved to be a story here because way to go for the woman involved to not only be capable of using what she had access to appropriately, but helping herself prevent a situation from being any worse than it already was, and obviously preventing it from ending tragically and getting a guy that was committing a crime apprehended. So good on you. I saw this story, which I wanted to share because it's valuable. There is now conversations about the vaccine and some of the decisions being made in Europe to maybe pause at least the AstraZeneca use as blood clotting becomes a concern. And this is something that's a precaution. I've read now quite a few different medical takes on how decision-making like this happens early on in vaccine use to be abundantly sure that something isn't necessarily a risk for the people utilizing it. But I also saw this story out of the Washington Post that some long-haul COVID-19 patients say their symptoms are finally subsiding after getting access to the vaccine. This is a tremendous benefit, of course, to those who fall into this very niche, very small category. One individual who is experiencing symptoms for 8 months, including reoccurring nightmares that would involve waking up in soaking sweat, crushing fatigue, insomnia, brain fog, muscle pain, all those things, is now reporting that those symptoms are finally subsiding. I felt like I was back to myself, said the Brooklyn native Ariana, to a way that I didn't think was possible when I was really sick for the last 8 months. So there are going to be stories that come out, positive, negative, Sometimes I think as we hear those stories, you're probably going to think in your brain, is this spin? Is this someone trying to convince me to do something or not do something? And I'll tell anyone that's reacting right now to me telling you this story that I'm not intending to spin the vaccine into something you think is good or bad. That's not my job, I don't think. I'm pretty sure that no one's hired me to do that just yet. It's just to inform you on all the information out there, and we're allowed to make our own decisions. I saw this in the Biden interview too. The machismo, I think is what he called it, something to that effect of deciding the vaccine isn't for you, that I don't want to take it because that's not the right way to phrase that, my friend. And I would definitely tell the president that if I ever got to have a conversation with him face to face, is that some people want to utilize their freedoms to do things that you don't agree with. And those things, as long as they are protected freedoms of ours, like deciding what medicine to put in our body, is something that I don't think is just machismo. I don't think it's just us trying to be, tough for the sake of toughness. I think it's someone exercising a right. I'm going to disagree with some rights that people have. Obviously, even the story I just told a second ago about a gun owner who utilized her weapon in a way to deter someone from hurting her. That's something that is a guaranteed right now. You're allowed to own a gun. And yet, obviously, people have opinions on that. But there's not going to be the same conversation, at least hopefully not the same conversation, about the way in which you need to be forced to do something or not do something. I know that the gun rights comes up all the time, just like the COVID vaccine. But it is the same thing. I know that a lot of people don't like to hear that because it seems to be some sort of way to help those who don't want to take the vaccine not take the vaccine. But it's just the truth. Let's just say the truth out loud and then move on and see how that does for society. Why not? I also saw this story. It's about the stress that might have been a part of our lives for the last year and how it will cripple our ability to make easy decisions. This is real. Researchers have found that decision-making processes have a certain degree of negative impact if you're under stress, and prolonged stress makes it worse. Our working memory capacity, so we have fewer cognitive resources available to us when our head is too focused on the stress that exists in the world. This is according to an expert out of the University of Texas in Austin. Even minor decisions take a certain amount of cognitive effort, and that's a limited amount of what we have available. So essentially what it's saying is that the more my brain is working on, say, stress and not feeling stressed, the less space it has, like almost a computer, to do things like make decisions. When's the last time you picked a Netflix documentary, a Netflix anything, or any other sort of streaming service with other people? I don't know if it's been a while, but even if you pick it alone, I guess, sometimes that struggle is way too real. It's just picking what to turn on a TV. Back in the day before streaming, you just flipped the channels until you liked something. Now we sit there with all the options, and for whatever reason, it takes way too long. That might be stress-induced. That might be because it's so difficult for our brains to focus on an easy task since we have so much else going on. And I'm sure that obviously these things hopefully will get better as we get back into the regular world in which we all lived. But you do wonder a little bit if some of the decision-making, I mean, honestly, there's debates in the grocery store that I've had with my wife when we go shopping now as to what items we should buy, that when you think about it, you're like, I don't know if we debated what sugar substitute to buy as long as we do now. I don't know that was as hard as a decision, as hard of a collective understanding. And I think maybe the stress involved in our lives is probably a big part of that. If you take the perspective that everything is really a process, this is quoting the article as well, then it actually removes a lot of the stress around decision-making. So the best way to free yourself of this problem, I guess, is to separate these tasks and to understand that what you're doing is just picking, and maybe every so often we can also have sugar in the house. I don't know, but that's not usually been the case. You got to have something that's, I've been putting on a little weight. All right, I got to be fair to the missus. Every so often when you're, during the time of pandemic, putting on a little extra weight, sugar's the easiest thing to remove. I feel like I overly focused on that one conversation and not this study, and that was a little odd. But yeah, if you're struggling with this kind of thing, just realize it's a process, and you'll get yourself out of it. All right, I got to take a break. I got to call the wife. Greg Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in. Every so often, I like to take a huge break from the politics and the news of the day, talk about other things. And I love this podcast, the Curiosity Daily podcast, because its co-hosts do a great job of telling me important, valuable information that usually has nothing to do with politics and the news of the day. Co-host Cody Gough joins me to talk about a few ones that you've missed if you don't listen to this podcast each day, and a whole bunch of ones coming up. Welcome to the program, Cody.
Hey, Craig, thanks for having me.
I'm thrilled always to have you. First, let's talk about some of the ones that people missed if they neglect to listen to your podcast every day. It wakes me up on every morning on my smart device, so it's very easy to do. Time management can make you happy, happier than maybe you are right now. Why and how is that true?
So researchers, everyone's heard that like better time management will make you more productive, you'll do better in school, all that stuff, right? Well, researchers looked at the data and they were like, you know what? Not a whole lot of studies have actually shown that. Like, we know that time management helps you have more free time, but it's like, does it actually improve people's performance? So they looked at it. They looked at a bunch of studies. They did what's called a meta-analysis, where they looked at like data from 160 past studies. And they found that, yes, time management will make you more productive, better, academically, but also it actually has a greater effect on your well-being and happiness. So you shouldn't just think of time management as, I'll get more done and, I'll be better at my job. It actually means you'll be a happier person. You'll feel higher life satisfaction when you better manage your time, which is a pretty compelling case for, better time management.
I hate this study because now it's getting harder and harder to have an argument where I don't manage things well. Now the wife is like, you'll be happier too, Craig. That's not good, Cody. I saw this, that liars may imitate your body language. Is that true? Do we actually now, if say I'm speaking to someone and they start seeming to be a mirror of me, I'm going to assume they're lying? Can I go that far?
You cannot go that far, actually. So this is interesting. Researchers equipped people in a study with accelerometers that basically measure every very minor movement that they make. And what they found was that liars subtly, in very, very small ways, imitate the body language of the person they're lying to. The researchers think it's because their brains are so busy trying to maintain the lie that it's easier for them physically to copy the body language of the person they're lying to. They don't even need to think about that. But what we kind of uncovered with this study also and wanted to shine a light on is that there are no good, scientifically sound ways to detect lies. Polygraphs are not great. None of the technology we have is great. You'll hear things like, oh, well, this person's body language and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. None of it holds up. None of it holds up. If you think you have like maybe if you know somebody really well, their tells, but there's no universal magic button for detecting lies. Otherwise, we'd use it all the time. So,
I can do it. I can do this, Cody. Science needs to study me. I know when people are lying all the time. I'm just a genius, though, like former President Trump was. So, that's it. That's how it goes. But that's hilarious, man. I didn't know that. I've never looked for someone mirroring my body language before that potentially is lying to me. One last one from the past, and then we'll get to you doing something very cool now when I chat with you, previewing stories that you haven't heard yet if you follow Curiosity Daily. Catnip doesn't just make your cat high. What else does it do?
It also, we finally figured it out. It also has an interesting protective defense mechanism. Catnip protects cats from mosquitoes. There's a chemical called nepetalactol that you'll find in both catnip and silvervine. And to a cat, not only when cats rub themselves, that nepetalactol is increasing their concentration of beta endorphins, which basically means their opioid system is being activated. So yeah, they're totally getting high, but also protects them against mosquitoes. And we see this in like wild cats in the wild. All cats love the stuff.
I got to ask you this real quick before I talk about the ones that are coming up on the show. What do you do with all this knowledge that has been thrown into your brain by hosting the show every day for the last couple of years now? I mean, the things you just quoted, do all those facts remain in the Cody Gough brain, or do a lot of them eventually leave like the rest of us?
Well, a lot of them are good reminders, like the lying one, because you'll see people go on the news and they're like, "Oh, look, that person raised his right arm, so that means they were lying." It's just kind of a good reminder to be skeptical of claims like that. And in other cases, I spent the last couple of days rubbing my face in catnip. Didn't have the same effect, but
yeah, I get it. You're just trying everything out.
Yeah.
And that's not new for you. The catnip thing, something you've been doing for a while. I've been meaning to talk to you about that. Let's talk about some of the upcoming stories you have. You've given me early access to some of this stuff. And if you want to hear Curiosity Daily, go to your favorite podcast platform. It's on all of them. Award-winning show. Ashley Hamer and Cody Gough host it. And they talk about this stuff that helps make you smarter every single day. How to reduce your internet carbon footprint. This is important for online meetings, important for a lot of things. How do we do that, Cody?
Yeah, this is a great pro tip if you're sick of video conference calls. If you sit at home, maybe you're working remotely, you're on Zoom calls all day. So since the pandemic started, people are commuting less, which is nice for the environment. But a lot of countries have internet traffic up by, let's say, like 20%. And researchers calculated how much carbon is emitted and how much water and land would be used up with every gigabyte of data. And it turns out that there's a pretty high amount. But here is a really easy life hack. If you turn off video on your Zoom calls, you're actually reducing your consumption and your carbon footprint by 96%. That you're almost eliminating it. And if you are required to have video on, here's another trick. Just switch your video from high definition to standard definition. That will reduce your internet consumption by 86%.
Wow. That is an extreme amount. So you're saying that if I do a blurry meeting, I'm just helping the economy. I'm just helping the world. That doesn't matter. I don't need to be seen in perfect high def.
You do not need to be seen in perfect high def. And let's be honest, who needs that? I have not showered in 2 days. I don't know about you.
Right. I mean, the only person who's going to demand it is Matthew McConaughey and his new YouTube page. Other than that, I can't think of anyone else that needs it. It's okay to gain weight as you get older. This is something you studied and you have proof on. I can actually call the wife and let her know.
There's actually a ton of proof. There's a huge study called the Framingham Heart Study from Massachusetts. They looked at more than 5,000 participants. And this is over the last 70 years. They looked at them from 1948 to 2010 and found that actually the most healthy participants in later age were those who steadily gained weight as they aged. So Craig, don't go to Chick-fil-A every day for lunch for the next 7 years.
But I want to.
If you slowly and steadily gain weight, the takeaway is, if you're getting into your 30s or 40s or 50s and you've got a few more pounds and you're like, oh, I used to look so much better, blah, blah, blah. Don't be hard on yourself. It's actually good. It turns out the human body knows what it's doing. So, don't worry about a couple extra pounds as you get older.
All right, that's good. That's good to know. I'm going to record that little piece of audio and play it all the time. By the way, the Popeyes chicken sandwich better than the Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich. I don't know if I'm being controversial here, but I think I've brought you over as the Popeyes chicken sandwich is the best of the sandwiches. Am I right? How often have you been eating those since I told you how great they were?
I misspoke. I meant to say the Popeyes chicken sandwich.
Okay, good. Yeah. Wonderful. By the way, we are previewing stories that you haven't heard yet, but will hear on upcoming episodes of Curiosity Daily, an award-winning podcast. I think this is a cool thing we're doing. I enjoy it a lot because I'll listen to these shows. Maybe don't work from home in your pajamas is another topic that you're going to cover soon. Why not?
Yeah, we're coming up on that one. And we do, in terms of being respectful of time, our podcast is only about 10 minutes a day. So we'll give you the quick fix of all this science. But upcoming, researchers found a correlation between poorer mental health and people that reported that they work from home in their pajamas. Now, we're very careful to point out in our podcast, the correlation is not causation. It doesn't mean if you work in your pajama pants, that means you're going to be less happy. But it could mean that. So if you found yourself extra down during the pandemic, which, we're all a little down, so it's kind of hard to parse that out. But if you found yourself extra down while you're working, or maybe less job satisfaction while working remotely, try to put a pair of pants on, and it could make a difference. So why not try it?
I love that as a bumper sticker for the Curiosity Daily Show. Try to put a pair of pants on. Don't really explain it beyond that. Just leave it at that phrase, and people will have to go to the show to figure it out. Man, why does he want me to put on pants? By the way, do you think it could work in the opposite if we all wind up in the offices, hopefully in the near future, that maybe that day that you need to mentally recover from whatever that version of life is that can get challenging, just wear pajamas to work for a day? Should we consider making that a thing?
I have always been an advocate of wearing pajamas to work, but I'm also an advocate of not having to go in the office. So it's a little bit of both for me.
You think you're addicted to the stay-at-home stuff?
I personally am, and I know a lot of people are not. I know many people that are like, we want to go back in, but I personally, no, I don't want to go back. Why?
There's nothing. I'll be honest with you, man, for just a second. I know this is not necessarily the topic you were thinking to talk about, but like, there's nothing like working and then going to my own fridge and making my own meal in my own kitchen and then going back to work. Like, I don't know how to mimic that in the workplace. I agree with you. There's some things that are just better about being at home while doing a gig. We got 2 more to preview, and then I'll let you go. I'm happy, as always, when you jump on and talk to us. Cody Gough from Curiosity Daily. There's certain things that people believe that might help with seasonal allergies, like honey. You've done some research, and you understand that these things aren't true. Is that right?
That is right. This is a big myth. Now, if you're listening and you like local honey, keep buying local honey. If you produce local honey, keep making local honey. Local honey is delicious. It's so good.
If we have a sponsor of local honey, local honey's the best.
No, and it is. I'm not even just saying that. I really am. But science matters, and what you need to know is that local honey does not stop seasonal allergies. And there's a specific reason for that. Seasonal allergies happen because a bunch of pollen gets kicked up by the wind and ends up in your body, and you have to deal with that. Bees usually pollinate plants that aren't pollinated by the wind. They need the bees to pollinate. So it's not even the same pollen. But more than that, bees don't make honey from pollen. They make it from nectar. Honey has negligible amounts of pollen in it. So you're not giving yourself small doses of pollen that cause your allergies to give you immunity. It doesn't make any sense. There's no connection whatsoever. So eat your local honey, but it's not going to stop your seasonal allergies.
I love how afraid you are of what seems to you to be the controversy of that topic. I don't understand the controversy at all. I love how worried you are. You're like, the local honey people are coming after us. Have you gotten threatening letters? Have they said things, Cody, to you?
The honey, the honey lobby is, you don't even know. They've got powerful people in high places, Craig.
I had no idea about the power behind Big Honey, but I'm glad that I know that now. By the way, Big Honey is a nickname that more people need to use for each other. One last one. Don't put coffee grounds in your garden. This is something you're claiming we shouldn't do, even though I know a lot of people that do it. They believe that it helps things to grow better. You're saying no. The science says no.
Yeah, and I used to be one of those people. I used to always put coffee grounds in my garden. So here's the thing. Caffeine is something we love. We love coffee. We love chocolate, right? But humans, we're able to handle caffeine. Caffeine is produced by plants as a defense mechanism to basically kill other plants. So if you got some, coffee plant or something, and you try to plant a bush next to it, that caffeine's gonna basically just kind of contaminate all the ground around it.
Got it.
So look, basically, caffeine doesn't like to share with its neighbors. And even after you brew your morning coffee, even after it's been through the machine, it still contains about as much caffeine as a cup of tea. So when you're putting those coffee grounds in there, that caffeine is going to damage your plants. Now, there's some instances where, depending on the acidity your plants need, maybe once in a blue moon if it's a certain thing like blueberries. But for the, by and large, you really don't want caffeine grounds in your garden. Sorry.
Look, we've talked for 10 minutes. I've learned a lot of things. I hope the listeners have learned a lot of things. I feel like this has been a hard-hitting interview for some reason, even though we've talked about nothing important, because I feel like I put you on the hot seat there a little, Cody. Thank you, as always, for jumping in and joining us on the show. People can find the Curiosity Daily podcast on all the platforms. Am I correct?
All the platforms. Yeah, you can go to curiositydaily.com, and we've got over 800 episodes. You can search for anything you're interested in.
You are also a Twitter user. Do you want to throw out your social media pages?
Yeah, you can follow me at Producer Cody, although lately I've just been tweeting about nerdy studies and, of course, St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, by the way, real quick, does science tell us how to spell that? Is it St. Patty's or St. Patty's Day with a T or a D?
I spell it Saint O'Patty-O's Day, which is probably too many O's, but yeah, here we are.
I think it's just enough. No, that's the other bumper sticker for the Cody Gough Show. Just enough O's. I'll talk to you in a bit. Oh, wow. That sounded terrible out of context. Just quick break. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
If you're part of the politically exhausted majority, don't fear. Your time to be validated and rejuvenated is here. Wake up. It's the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in a lot of news of the day that we will get to later. I don't want to talk about that right now. I saw that International World Sleep Day, something like that, is coming up. It's at the tail end of this week, which is one, ridiculous that we have so many holidays now that no one knows about or celebrates. No one celebrates this. But two, that it allows the internet to create articles about things that are connected to these ridiculous holidays. This one advises the best ways to get a good night's sleep, something that you might be struggling with. I struggled with earlier this week, got a great one last night. One of the big pieces of advice is that you shouldn't use your bed for anything more than sleep. And I feel like people aren't going to be able to follow this perfectly. But what it essentially says is that if you want to get more sleep in your life, you might go to bed earlier, or you might set your alarm later, which means maybe you're naturally waking up but lying in bed for a while. And these are bad. These lower the amount of sleep drive you have, or the encouragement you have to actually try to sleep when you're in the bed. So to make this better for ourselves, put things away like the cell phone, what have you, and get in bed when you're just ready to sleep. Sleep for just the amount of time that you need, and then get up when you wake up. Don't just lay in bed, and your brain will start to relate sleeping. I know that I now sound like Cody Gough in the Curiosity Daily segment by throwing a little bit of science at you, but your brain will now relate the act of getting in bed as an act of sleeping. See, but there's a problem. I know that there's a problem for a lot of us with this. I don't want to get into too much detail as to what that is, but I'm sure that there are some things that people may or may not do well in the bed that probably they don't want to. Anyway, we can move on to other things. There's a lot else in the news. By the way, good news for those who have Labrador. Labs are the favorite dog yet again of the American people. I guess another survey went out. I don't know if this is controversial, and I'm going to lose a bunch of the Bulldog, the Golden Retriever, the German Shepherd owners. But Labs are number one. After them, French Bulldogs, number two. They're up several spots from the previous year. Yes, I'm doing a popular dog segment before the end of this segment. French Bulldog, number two. German Shepherd, number three. Golden Retrievers, 4. Bulldog, 5. Poodle, 6. Beagle, 7. Rottweiler, 8. Anyone that has a poodle, I do wonder, and I know at least a couple friends that do this, that you go real crazy with the hair all the time for the poodle compared to other dogs. I don't know if that's what we're supposed to do. Is that a requirement? Let me know on our Facebook pages. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. I want to play a little game here. What is the most controversial thing said recently? It's a fun game, and I have a very much a dark horse candidate in all of this. But the first couple come from the former president of the United States and the current president of the United States, both of which gave interviews yesterday. Former President Donald Trump called into Fox News. I guess controversial to a lot of people is his answer to the question, will he run in 2024? It sounds like the answer is yes, although it took a while to get there. Former President Trump, as we all know, is a guy that gives a lot of words. When you ask him a question, he doesn't answer it quickly. He gives a lot of other takes involved in that one answer. But this is what it sounds like when you call up Fox News And you're asked, are you going to run in 2024, former President Donald Trump?
Well, based on every poll, they want me to run again, but we're going to take a look and we'll see. We have first steps first. We have to see what we can do with the House. I think we have a very, very good chance of taking back the House. We did a great job. You're going to lose from 15 to 25 seats the last time. I got involved. I worked very hard. I made tremendous amounts of meetings, speeches, and teleconferences and everything else. We ended up winning 15 seats instead of losing potentially 25 seats.
That was part of the victory of former President Trump's administration, according to him. What was the rest of it?
We'll make our decision after that. But you know what? If you take a look at the polls, Maria, when you take a look at what's happening on our southern border, when you take a look at what's happening with energy independence, which will be gone in 2 months, and we had it for the first time ever, we had it. And prices were low. When you take a look at all of the things, and then when you add the fact that I was the one, and this administration was the one that came up with a vaccine, which is going to save the world, okay? It's going to save. We would be, I think, worse than 1917, where 50 to 100 million people died. The vaccine is such a big thing. When you add it all up, I think we'll do very well in 2 years, and I think we're going to do very well in 4 years.
All right, option one, and I know that people who love him are going to think that this is true, and people who hate him are going to think it's 100% a lie, and there's probably some level of gray and all that, but most controversial thing he might have said that Donald Trump is going to save the world. Now let's get to Joe Biden, and this is not being covered as controversial, although I really feel as though it would have been had it been a Republican that had said this, but Joe Biden was put to the point while talking about the border. He was asked by George Stephanopoulos, I don't even know if I said that right the second time, still mumbling over it, if he wanted to be clear in telling immigrants not to come across our border right now, since there is a problem there, one that seems to be difficult to address sometimes for the administration itself. But here's what Joe said. Actually, no, that's the wrong audio. I got to fix that audio. This is actually whether or not Biden plans on traveling to the border. This is something he was asked before taking a flight this morning. He is not intent at all on visiting the border. I'll play this for you because I thought it was interesting, and then we'll get to the more controversial thing.
Not at the moment.
Have you decided when you're able to share thoughts with other countries? Is it allies or neighbors first? Who will be the first country to get U.S. vaccines?
I've been talking with several countries already. Well, I'll let you know that very shortly.
I know there's a big rumble of the plane that's about to take off there, but the two things he was asked is, do you plan on traveling to the border? And he said, not at the moment. And then they asked, do you plan on sharing the vaccine with other countries? And he said he's in talks, as you heard, but none of that is really fully confirmed yet. Here is the quote that is being covered a lot of places of Biden saying on immigration that people shouldn't really come across the border right now, that there's other things that you can do.
And most of them come with a phone number. So what we're doing is we're putting together an entire organizational structure so that within 7 days you're able to get in the phone, contact that number, find out whether there is a mother or a father, whether it is safe, whether it is a secure circumstance to get the child to that adult.
It's going to take some time, though, to get those policies in place again. Do you have to say quite clearly, don't come?
Yes, I can say quite clearly, don't come. And what we're in the process of getting set up, and it's not going to take a whole long time, is to be able to apply for asylum in place. So don't leave your town or city or community.
Don't come. Don't come to our country right now. That's something that President Biden said during his interview that's being covered as if it's a great thing and a positive thing to be said. And I know that is what we want. We want people to not cross the border illegally. And yet you just can imagine that if that was said by the guy who also said that he saved the world, the way in which it'd be covered if former President Donald Trump said do not come would be different. All right, those are the two candidates for most controversial thing. Here's the third one, and I do have the audio, but I don't think I'm going to play it. It's a TikTok video. It's a woman. She kicks off the video by saying that you've been going to the restroom wrong. She uses other words for it. She believes... I love this. This has to win, by the way. This is way different than the first two and why I enjoy so much talking about things other than politics. She said you've been going to the bathroom wrong. If you have to go, number two, you should utilize the entire toilet differently than you normally do it. You should sit backwards and use the second part of the toilet as a little shelf. You can bring your favorite snacks. These are real things said on social media that went viral. She said, get your favorite snacks, get your favorite TV show, maybe a little laptop to watch it. and that's how you should sit while you conduct that activity. It's the best of times, she said. You just sit there, do your thing, and enjoy your life. Netflix, all these things are recommendations. I'm not sure that even if she becomes a terribly viral success for this, and it seems that this is working out, millions of people have viewed it, 3 million, I guess, so far. Nothing but positive comments, it says, by the way, as far as people who are commenting on the video, like how genius it is. I don't think it's going to take off. I don't think the reverse situation there, and then bringing in your favorite items. I don't think I've ever consumed anything in a bathroom because that sounds disgusting. And I do not think that I needed a table in order to try to consume things. But that's my question to you. And I really would like social media to answer that question, because I like to play a game that I don't think gets played by the listeners enough, where Chad comes back to the show, which he'll be back tomorrow, and has no idea what we were talking about based on the things that were being said to him on social media. So that is my question. Would you go to the bathroom backwards to follow the advice of a YouTube or a TikTok celebrity that is all over the news right now, at least the social media news? And is that the most controversial thing said in the last few days? Has to be. Nothing politically that was said. Mitch McConnell saying that he'd grind all of the Senate to a halt if filibusters go away is not more controversial than whether or not you should do the reverse cowboy while sitting on the old toilet. All right, I have to take a break. More coming up in just a bit. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
Let the Washington Beltway strangle you. This is where the exhausted majority comes to refuel, realign, and reevaluate. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Good news, bad news, I don't know. It depends on your take, I guess, on all this. Prince Harry has talked to his brother. He's talked to his dad recently. Gayle King confirmed that Prince Harry did get on the phone with Prince William and Prince Charles. They had a non-productive conversation, I guess. It was, quote, not productive, according to Gayle. That is interesting. But they're all happy. I guess all sides are happy that they have started a conversation, at least. It is mentioned here, too, that no one in the royal family has spoken directly with Meghan Markle at all, which is not surprising. And Gayle King added, when she was giving this update, that Meghan does have documents to back up everything she said with Oprah. Everything she said with Oprah, I think, was highlighted there. Very interesting, at least to me. I know some people might barely care about this story, but this part is actually some of the things that Prince Harry said to me were more interesting than some of the things Meghan Markle said, to be honest. The first thing that technically is Prince Harry's and not Meghan's is the whole thing about the baby. That's a conversation that Prince Harry had relayed to Meghan that she then told us via that interview. It wasn't necessarily a conversation that Meghan had with anyone, if I remember it correctly. So that revelation is somewhat owned by Prince Harry being the one that said it existed. And then also the fact that he wasn't talking to his family. For whatever reason, that's always going to interest me when you have an out with the family members, whether you're a royal person or not. So the fact that dad was no longer answering his phone calls was something he said was a thing. And apparently that's now over. This is the entirety of how much I care about it, though, so I'm going to move on from that topic. They are now speaking. Not productive. I can't imagine what they said to each other, by the way. If everything in the interview was true, it wasn't necessarily trying to take anything away from that, but maybe trying to reposition how exactly going forward. And I do think it's that, by the way. I guess I'm not done talking about this. That you jump on a phone call with somebody. You do it partially to prevent them from continuing to do more interviews. Because I think that one, whether you believe it or not, damaging is the right word as far as the royal family goes. That interview was not helpful. It didn't make people feel better about the royal family and how weird it is to even have one that has no real role in politics but exists in a country in this world in the year in which we're all living. All right, let's move on. I saw this story and I loved it a lot. This guy is 26 years old. His name is Cam Hughes. He has an interesting profession. For a living, he is paid by sports teams to be a quote-unquote super fan, and/or I guess you could call him a maniac. It's a job that he loves. It's his dream job. You need high energy to do it. But teams around the world, this isn't just necessarily sports teams here in the United States, pay for high-octane energy, good or bad dancing, potential fans. I'd get a call to do a Stanley Cup Finals, he says, or Oklahoma City Thunder used to hire me before games. They would be like, we need you to be a superhero. go out there in the world and do crazy things. Going into 2020, I had the busiest year of my career. I love that he called it a career, by the way. And of course, his career was impacted. It was slowed down just a bit by the fact that, unfortunately, and actually, by the way, he's not 26 years old. He's 50. He's been doing this for 26 years. I misquoted that part. But everything shut down, so his career was on hold. I wonder how he kept active. Like they say, baseball players, other athletes who weren't actively allowed to be a part of their sport for a while, kept doing things like hitting the batting cage at home. Does this guy, is he a maniac with the family at home? Does he turn on an old game and try to recreate the magic that is what he does when he gets... I'm not totally making fun of him. I kind of love this idea of just being a fan that's so into it, because we've all been there. We've gone to a game, we've been at a sporting event where there's some fan that gets everybody else to be more active and cheer a lot more. For my wife, it's whenever I bring her to the Yankee Stadium bleachers. She says that it's just more fun, even though there's no back support. It's the people there are just crazier, the bleacher creatures, and it gets you more into the game. And I'm sure that it distracts the other team more. I'm sure this is tremendously beneficial to hire people to be insane and supporters of certain teams. And also, it is sort of disappointing. I will say that. We always talk about in the world of politics how maybe people in much more serious, much less silly situations are paid and not actually people there like protesters or whatnot to do things that are actually in their own hearts. If this guy is paid, if he's not a fan of the team that I'm there to support and he just brought me in by seeming like a super fan, I do feel a little hurt. I feel like I've now learned some things. I've gone into the window of the real world and it didn't feel so great. He said, we all need to be cheered up right now. It sounds cheesy, but it's true. That is true. There are other ways you can contribute to a team if you can't actually attend an event, he said. There's obviously things you can do, on social media or what have you. But just the fact that this guy exists, that his career is back on track now, obviously I hope he's getting into more and more stadiums and games in the very near future and doing his thing. And that, more of us might be able to use this. Maybe you hire this guy for an office space. Maybe once everybody is finally back in the office and you have to go through that world again, and maybe some people start to hit the wall of not being allowed to work from home, which is going to happen to some, you just bring in the lunatic. And that's not what his name is. I'm just adding it. To go there, be crazy, enjoy it, spark everybody's drive to succeed, and then you keep going. But it's fantastic to me. I can't get over that story enough. I think I'm going to keep talking about it throughout the whole day. All right, I see this story too. Florida hotels are adding a new package to hope to incentivize people to come and visit the wonderful state of Florida right now, as obviously travel is also something that is slowly starting to recover. They're adding wedding packages that are quote unquote influencer styled. These are things that come directly from the pages of Pinterest and other places. Many celebrity influencers, which is a weird term to still say out loud, would have a hand in the design, the creation of these packages. And actually the pitch from one of the directors of this service, one of the hotels in Florida, says, anyone who has gone through the wedding process knows how overwhelming it can be. There's so many decisions to make. It's easy to click through blogs and pin items on Pinterest, but putting it all together is an entirely different story. Hashtag life is hard, I guess. Our Styled with Love program, which is what they're calling it, aims to make things easier for engaged couples. At our hotel, you'll be able to pick a wedding designed from our love book with everything in it, rather than searching around for all the individual components. And the love book, it comes from the social media influencer people. I mean, is there going to be a point where and I'm a millennial. I want to keep saying that so people know I'm on the younger side of things, not, I guess, the youngest side, the youngest generation anymore. But is there a moment where YouTube or whatever your favorite celebrity is going to make all your decisions for you? Can you think about the branded food products that get shipped to your house and then you wind up doing the wedding and styled by the Instagram or whoever celebrity? I mean, you should be able to build this in pieces on your own. This isn't the kind of thing that you should need this much help with. And I've been through a wedding process. I got married. I did none of the plans. As a typical guy, I pretty much said yes, and I helped pay the bills. But other than that, the wedding was crafted predominantly by my wife. So maybe I don't understand. Maybe this is, again, me being in the minority and not getting the challenge here. But I guess these places in Florida assume that they're going to see a huge uptick in the amount of people picking them up for, the stylized wedding events because they're coming directly from the pages of YouTube, Instagram, and whatnot. Also in good news, for anyone that's a fan of hers, Dolly Parton has a brand new ice cream that's out there. Jenny's Splendid Ice Creams has collaborated on a brand new flavor, the Dolly Parton flavor of ice cream. I wonder what, you would put in an ice cream that's named after Dolly Parton. I'm sure that some of us can think of things. It's specifically made for her, according to the thing, the statement here. Hypothetically speaking, we had a new collaborative flavor in the works that we hope you'd use. It's specifically designed for Dolly Parton, as Dolly Parton helped to create it. In the caption of the image, Jenny's explains that the upcoming flavor will benefit the Imagination Library, a foundation that Dolly Parton is specifically connected to. Jenny's hasn't released what the flavor will be or when it will be out for the public to consume, but just the fact that it exists and it's based on Dolly Parton is enough maybe to make some people at least curious. So then I ask you again on social media, if you want to tell us there or where, what flavor, what type of items would you put, certain candy products in a Dolly Parton ice cream? I'm not going to answer those questions here on the air. I'm going to let you do that on our social media pages. That is the Chad Benson Show on Facebook, the Craig Collins Show on Facebook while I'm here. And honestly, he's on Twitter. Chad's everywhere. So go ahead and tell us there what you think the upcoming flavor will taste like. Quick break and a lot more in a bit. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. I'm not above any discussion of controversy, any wondering if something did or didn't happen. I will cover all of them, as I'm about to mention. Craig Collins, as I said, filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Did Wendy Williams burp and fart at the same time? I'm a juvenile. I'm a child. I know I just lost some of you. I know the minute that I said that that's the premise of what I'm about to talk about, that some people are like, this is dumb. I'm going to wait for him to talk about politics again or anything more important than this. Here, I'll play audio. I have audio for you. And she, I guess, was talking about Kim and Kanye and their separation. And then something happened. She apologized for it. And people are wondering if it was a twofer, if it was a burp and a fart at the same time.
And she probably got 5 new boyfriends. We haven't caught anybody coming out of the house yet, but just a matter of time. She's not lonely. Yeah. I apologize.
I mean, obviously she burped. We can all hear that. But did the other part happen? Do you want this again? Does anyone want this audio again? Maybe producer Phil should tell me in my ear if I should play it again so that we can get down into the controversy to know whether or not people did Wendy Williams, thank you, Phil, burp and fart at the same time.
She got 5 new boyfriends. We haven't caught anybody coming out of the house yet, but just a matter of time. She's not lonely. Yeah.
The second one, the second noise there sounds like a bit of a fart to me. This is the world in which we live and the things we talk about. You hear it? I think we all heard it. I love how the audience gasps, too, by the way. Like, that was like shock and horror as to what just happened there. Did she do both at the same time? Maybe she did, or were people just interested? In other body news, since I guess I'm going to go down this road first before I will get to Joe Biden talking, which, by the way, is at times way more boring than this stuff. Shaquille O'Neal appeared on the Conan O'Brien podcast, and he was talking about Conan is now very much a podcaster all over the place. But Shaq was talking about an incident he once had with Icy Hot while playing. I believe that this is completely fine audio to play. Let's make sure. This is Shaq talking about his Icy Hot in-game situation.
I always used to see Icy Hot in the locker room. And one day I kind of had like a thigh bruise, and the guy rubbed it, but he rubbed it too high. So during the game, my little guys started getting hot, like really hot. And it got to the point where I was like, I need a doctor. My little guys are on fire. So
he's talking about, parts of the male anatomy, but he had to leave a game. This is Shaq actually discussing it. He, I guess, later decided he had to pour milk on the area to make it better in the shower. But that's real. That's from the Conan O'Brien podcast. Shaquille O'Neal one time had too much Icy Hot in an area we probably don't want too much Icy Hot. All right, let's move on to serious things. I know that was way too much of a dovetail. President Joe Biden spoke obviously gave one of his interviews, not doing many of these interviews, about a lot of different things. He talked about the border in great detail. He talked about Cuomo, Governor Cuomo, and what he thinks is the next appropriate steps here. You will notice that the way that Democrats are covering this is a little bit weird. They acknowledge how bad all the accusations are, how women need to be trusted and believed. Then after they say that the investigation has to take place, so they're not really taking that much of a stance right now. Obviously, Chuck Schumer, some others have stepped forward to say that they think that Cuomo should resign, something he's not done yet. I don't think he's got any intention of doing that. But here's President Biden's answer to the Cuomo question.
You've said you want the investigation to continue. You saw Chuck Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, majority of the congressional delegation don't think he can be an effective governor right now. Can he serve effectively?
That's a judgment for them to make about their state where they can be effective. Here's my position. It's been my position since I wrote the Violence Against Women Act. A woman should be presumed to telling the truth and should not be scapegoated and become victimized by her coming forward, number one. But there should be an investigation to determine whether what she says is true. That's what's going on now.
And you've been very clear. If the investigation confirms the claims, he's gone.
That's what I think happens. And by the way, it may very well be there could be a criminal prosecution that is attached to it. I just don't know. But let the investigation. And I don't know what it is. But I start with the presumption. It takes a lot of courage for women to come forward. Some are not. Anyway. It takes a lot of courage to come forward. So the presumption is it should be taken seriously and it should be investigated. And that's what's underway now.
Had he finished that some or not sentence, I wonder how that would have been covered by the media. He didn't. We don't know what the rest of that point would have been after saying that you need to trust women when they first step forward, but some are not anyway. But that is Joe Biden talking about Cuomo and his beliefs there, which really is a nothing answer because you say all the right things. That you need to respect, one, the amount of people stepping forward, and two, the things they're saying. But you also need to have an investigation take place. So right now, I am advocating for nothing. Let's just wait and get more information later. Very interesting. Biden also talked about the filibuster, which is a often discussed part of the political process, and whether or not it should be removed as an option. This is kind of a more inside baseball political thing, but something that I think is interesting to be debated so much. And Biden's sort of non-answer to this question, saying that it should go back to what it used to be. But here, this is Biden talking about the filibuster, and some Democrats, certainly more very to the left Democrats, pushing for this to no longer be an option within the political process.
I don't think you have to eliminate the filibuster. You have to do it what it used to be when I first got to the Senate and back in the old days when you used to be around there. And that is that you had to stand up and command the floor, and you had to keep talking alone. You couldn't call for, no one could say, quorum call. Once you stopped talking, you lost that, and someone could move in and say, I moved the question of. So you got to work for the filibuster.
So you're for that reform. You're for bringing back the talking filibuster.
I am. That's what it was supposed to be. Look, I think, don't hold me to the numbers, George, but I think between 1960 and 2000, there were I'm making this number up, I don't know. There were 50 filibusters. And now they're like 200 since then.
I love that last part. I'm just going to make some stuff up, and I want you to know it's made up, but let's pretend it's true for a second, and this is the truth. But the filibuster is something that's often discussed now that Mitch McConnell said would ground all the Senate to a halt if it was totally removed from the political process, because that would be his protest to get it back within the political process. I don't know. I don't know that it's all that interesting to a large majority of people, whether or not it exists or doesn't exist. I will just say this about any of these reforms that take place that are utterly partisan in the way in which they're done to transform the way that politics work. They will be changed once the other side gets power, which they will gain again. And the push back and forth will be the real problem. Whether or not the Senate would actually ground to a halt as far as the procedural ability of that government body until something like this were restored is less relevant to me than the fact that the politics will just become more and more of this sort of action, that you take power and you do this reform, and then when they take power, they change it back. And you don't want to have those fights in general. You don't want to be in a world where getting you back is the goal of the politicians once they gain power, as opposed to actually doing our jobs. We would like our politicians to focus first and foremost on doing the jobs that their constituents would like for them to do, and not necessarily whether or not they need to change some of the procedures that have been taken away that need to be restored. It is a silly, silly thing. Finally, I guess I can play just a little bit of the audio from his discussion on, well, you know what? Actually, let's go ahead and play this. This is Biden talking about the Republican Party and whether or not he thinks he can work with them, something that obviously was a promise. He wanted to unite both sides, have everyone work together. Is that something that's currently happening? George Stephanopoulos doesn't think so. Is that something that maybe will happen when the Republican Party is more woke, when they truly wake up to what's going on? What did President Biden have to say to that?
They haven't had that epiphany you said you were going to see in the campaign.
No. Well, I've only been here 6 weeks, pal. Okay, give me a break. Been here 6 weeks. I think the epiphany is going to come between now and 2022. This is there's 78% of the people say they support this program. 52% of Republicans. Let's assume it's off by 15%. You're going to go home and campaign. Republican voters want that $1,500 because they're in trouble. Republican voters want to be able to choose between being able to go to work and send their kid to a daycare that they can afford. Republican voters want to be able to take care of a child care tax credit. I mean, it's not like every Republican voter is a billionaire. And by the way, and I'm not saying I'll do it again, but I won those Republican voters in suburbia.
You won some of the Republican voters, yes, not all of the Republican voters. It's interesting. It's interesting to discuss how they get to a point where maybe the politics are removed from some things like the coronavirus vaccine, because the current administration is not putting that olive branch out there that might do a lot of good in actually bringing more people along for the ride that is the Biden presidency now. Because truthfully, what you need to do is highlight the good, highlight the successes that are done. And that is easy with the coronavirus vaccine, easier than anything else, to be honest with you, in Operation Warp Speed. And yet it doesn't happen. So questions like that have a ton of validity to me. And questions like whether or not Wendy Williams burped and farted at the same time also have a lot of validity to me. I can't help being who I am. Quick break and a little bit more after this. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
No fake outrage here, just the real thing. The Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Chad is back tomorrow. I do want to talk about this real quick. A woman got the first remote tattoo. This is a real thing. A woman in the Netherlands got a tattoo via robotic arm from an artist who was 300 miles away. It's the first ever that this time has happened. The woman is a Dutch actress, and here is some of the audio of that coverage.
We've got real-time human hand tracking. We've got precise control over a robot. We've got tattooing. One of the biggest challenges is actually trying to recreate all of the subtle human nuances of the artist. For all intents and purposes, the person at the other end is getting tattooed by a human being. It's just that the human isn't there. If this goes wrong, then it's gone wrong forever. It's not like we could be like, oh, no, take two.
I think we can go.
Yeah, okay, let's go.
Nice!
That was intense. If we can use 5G to do something like this, then I'm really excited to see what else it can do.
Apparently 5G was utilized in the process, and the woman seems very happy with her nice being yelled out there. I feel like this trailblazing is going to cause a lot of other things to happen, but a robotic arm controlled by a tattoo artist 300 miles away from a woman in the Netherlands officially got her remote tattoo and is very excited about it. Do you blame the robot? Like, if a mistake were made, if you make a bad design in the world of this, and then the person's living with that too forever, do you just say, like, the 5G had a blip? You're like, nah, that wasn't me. I didn't draw that awesome or accidental smiley face in the middle of your tattoo. That was totally the robot going rogue for a second. And what happens there? I don't know. A lot of questions, not very many answers, but I thought that was interesting. I also saw this in the news that Japan is warning the public against karaoke spots. Karaoke, very popular in parts of Asia and certainly in Japan, but people are getting packed into small areas where they're singing and getting intoxicated, and those are bad things when coronavirus is not officially defeated yet. At least 215 people had recently tested positive for the coronavirus after going to a daytime karaoke spot in Japan. So their economic minister had to go out and say that this is a bad decision. You should not be making this decision, and you got to wait for the coronavirus to be fully defeated before you get back to the the karaoke world that so many people love. I mean, I also like a karaoke bar. I don't think that this is necessarily specific to a country. I'm a fan of it. I would assume, though, out of all the places that are, one, a bar, and two, a place where you could easily spread spittle and other things, the karaoke bar would be at the top of the list. Maybe not number one on that list, but fairly high at the top of the list because, there is a lot of things that go on. You got the group performance every so often. This would be an easy way to accidentally be hit in the face with some stray saliva. Anyway, go ahead and move on. I don't want you to unpack that sentence all that much. Nebraska dog rescue reunited an Iowa woman with a pet that had wandered 100 miles away. This is a feel-good story for people out there that need some feel-good stories right now. The dog got loose in Iowa last month just during a record cold weather break and decided to just kind of trek. The black lab, which is a mix, I guess, named Ivy. I'm glad at the amount of research that was done, the thorough reporting here. I had made it 100 miles. It took 23 days before the pet was caught and brought back to their owner. The trip would take 90 minutes driving by car. Ivy was in a bad condition when she was finally approached by an Omaha woman that had found her, seeking food, all kinds of things. Once nursed back to health, the dog has been reunited with the owner. See, happy story here. Obviously a crazy thing to probably live through if you're the pet owner there, to have your pet wander off in the bitter cold. But hey, things don't have to end so badly. I also saw this. I like this. I want to dive into one more kind of sciencey thing if I can on a science-heavy day. I saw that the fear that many people have of one day becoming like your parents is pretty much impossible to avoid, according to the latest science. Introjection is what they call it, which is cool. A phenomenon that humans absorb the attitudes, values, traits of the people they spend the most time with. Not one of the sexier psychoanalytical things that people discuss a lot, but it is a real, actual phenomenon. Talking to behavior scientists and psychology experts, they found that there was a grown-up switch that kind of clicks in our brains. Everybody has it. Nobody really understands where it comes from or why the switch inevitably gets turned on. But at some point in your life, and this is specifically bad news, I guess, to younger people, millennials, Gen Z, but at some point in your life, utterly unavoidable, you can go and get, and I guess they say this in the story too, that people are getting, treatment. They're doing psychology and counseling to prevent them from one day becoming more like their parents, whatever problems they feel their parents have. And it's just not going to be entirely avoidable. That switch is going to flip. The lurch into self-identified adulthood seems to be precisely when people start becoming their parents. We initially thought it was when people had kids, but we found out, no, it's more like those other family moments, buying a home, maybe living on your own, that turn you into mom or dad. I just love this story for so many reasons, because in all honesty, as you think about it more and more, there's a lot of things that aren't so bad about that, right? Anybody that's worried, there is a whole lot that you probably don't have to be all that concerned about, because in the real world, maybe not as much of that is as harmful as some people think. You certainly don't need treatment on it. I do want to highlight one more time something I talked about earlier, I guess in the same vein too. The dad bod, the most attractive body type out there on social media, according to dating.com, 90% of people said that they are okay with the dad bod. So if you put on a little extra weight this holiday season or whatever, not even holiday season for St. Patrick's Day, but the pandemic year that we've all had, you don't have to worry about it impacting your ability to date, because you're going to be just fine in that world. It's going to be something that you can overcome because, well, although I do, and I want maybe a judge's ruling on this, maybe from our world of social media, as to what exactly a dad bod is, because it does feel like it's all over the place, from a guy who's basically in shape to a guy who's definitely not in shape, depending on how you follow it. And I don't follow it enough to know for sure, but I do wonder which one of those it actually is. And then you know what? I'll close with this. It's St. Patrick's Day. Happy holidays to everybody out there. But there is a debate right now as to how you appropriately spell the shortened version of the holiday, St. Patty's with 2 D's or St. Patty's with 2 T's. I don't think it matters. I think that if this is a hill that you're arguing on in the world of social media and you want to die on the appropriate or inappropriate way to shorten a name like that, I think that you need some other interests. I think that maybe what you need to do is put down the social media devices, put down the phone, the computer, everything, walk outside and just look around for an amount of time. That's my penalty to anyone having this argument right now on social media. You have to go outdoors, look outside, maybe look up into the world that exists for, I'm going to give you a 20-minute, this is a prescription now. I feel like Dr. Craig is speaking. You have 20 minutes to just stand outdoors and do nothing technology related because you need a breather. This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in.
This is the Chad Benson Show.